commentating, when you're talking about knowing all the things going on in the background, do you weave that into your commentary? Like, I noticed this, or I spoke to this trainer, or because when you're commentating on the fights, there's obviously 15 minutes if it goes 3 rounds where you need to add commentary, what's happening, but also a little backstory in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's important, and I think that John Gooden does a good job contributing to that as well. I mean, he really spends a lot of time sitting down with fighters during fight week and talking through their training camp, what they've been doing, and influences and assistances that they've had during the training camp, which are always really interesting. You know, if someone's brought in a new training partner, like Alexander Gustafsson brought in Jimmy Manoa to help him train, and that for me is just a fascinating little piece of the puzzle. Yeah. And John's really good at finding those pieces, and I do as well. I mean, it's interesting because I think we work well as a team. We have different accesses to fighters. Like, fighters look at him much more as that he's the UFC employee, the one that conducts the interviews, and I do all my, this is the presentation of my training camp for you. Whereas for me, because I've been a fighter, and because a lot of the fighters in the UFC now were, aiming for the UFC when I was fighting, I get the much more kind of, fighter to fighter conversation. So I get the, oh yeah, this has been kind of bugging me, but I've been working around it, and this guy's helped me with this. So there are different elements that John and I bring to the table, and I think mine is much more of a, being in there on the mat and being treated and spoken to like a fighter. And I think that's a really interesting part of the commentary. I think that we need to address every area of the game and of each fighter's training camp.
I've been very impressed with John. I didn't know about him before. I didn't know he had the Cage Warrior background. So when he sprung up, I kind of honestly was like, who is this guy? And then what does he know about fighting? But he's very on point. Yeah. And you guys do make a great team because he doesn't claim to be a fighter. And, so he does his thing, you do your thing. And you guys seem to work really well together.
Yeah, I ever since the first day we met, it was, we clicked, we did a screen test, and it just worked immediately. I have a lot of respect for him and the work that he's done on other organizations' shows. And because he was working, for Cage Warriors and things like that, he saw the rise of Conor McGregor as he was coming up. So, John was commentating on his world title fight. So that's a really interesting element to add into our commentary, because we're working a lot with European fighters. And John's got much more of a European-based knowledge of mixed martial arts, whereas mine's much more of an international, but more North America based. I'm more familiar with the fighters in the gyms there because I've been living there.
Right. You lived in Vegas for how long?
3 years.
Okay. Yeah, that adds a nice reference point for you, right? So you can kind of access that if you need to. Yeah. There's no rule book for fighters becoming commentators. I think of Brian Stan, Florian, of course, but like when you decide, okay, now I'm going to be the commentator, like how did you decide how you wanted to be?
I just obviously Joe Rogan's he set the bar very high, and Joe does a really good job. There are elements that I've looked at Joe Rogan and I've thought there are certain things about his commentary style that I really like. Some things that just wouldn't suit me. I can't do the screaming at the top of your voice thing. That just, I get really excited, but I just don't unleash like Rogan does. And I think that he does that really well, but I don't think I could do that as well as Joe. So I think,
nor would the UK fans or the European fans necessarily want you to, because I think one thing UFC recognized is that we needed our own people over here.
Yeah, the market is definitely very different, and we're much more interested in the actual, the technical aspects of the fight and the backstory. And another thing that I've noticed about Europe is that we love an underdog story, and we love someone that's turned their life around, turned their career around.
Okay, more so than the States.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. In the US, this is purely from my experience, but there's always been more of a focus on this guy's the winner. This guy, look at this win streak he's put together. He's untouchable. No one can touch him. And he's like superhero. Whereas in the US, in the UK, we're much more of a, wow, he lost 3-4 fights and then all of a sudden he's turned it around again. And there's, they like that story.
Right, which is why they like your story always.
Well, I think I've been well received by the European fans just because I've been quite real about it. It's sport. Sometimes you lose. I was doing breakdowns today for the Condit Lawler fight, and I was editing clips of my own fight against Condit when he knocked me out, and it is what it is. Sometimes you roll the dice and you lose, and then that's sport. And I've never really had a problem with that. And the whole bravado of no one can beat me. I never really had that because I never believed it. There was always an element of, well, there's always somebody out there that can beat me.
Right.
And I like that talk. Again, we're going back to Conor McGregor, but I like that bravado that he has. It suits him. It just didn't work for me though. I'm far more honest with myself and with everybody else for me to get kind of carried away with that type of hype.
To watch the rest of this fascinating interview, click on the link below and go to londonrealacademy.com. There you can sign in with your social media login and watch the rest of the episode for free, along with all of our episodes on London Real, my webinars, and all of our premium content, all located over at londonrealacademy.com. So click on the link below, you'll be directed there and you can watch the rest of this fascinating interview, and I'll see you there.